Mhm. Second. Yeah, okay. All right. And here we are for another episode of Dualistic Unity Raw call-in edition. This one came kind of quick. I'm not quite sure why. I feel like we just had a call-in show. So it's pretty awesome that we get to have another one, especially with the Netherlands retreat coming up. And the fact that honestly, I've been thinking about this. A lot of our discussion is just kind of going back and forth, especially considering that we're always kind of exploring different parts of our life and different corners of our own awareness and consciousness and all of that. And so that's really useful. But one thing I really enjoy is the participation of the community. I have to say that's probably one of my favorite parts about Dualistic Unity is when people call in to the show, they want to share something, they want to ask something, or they write in a comment on Instagram or TikTok, or they leave a comment on YouTube. It really is very helpful because at least then we're not just addressing things as they come through the awareness of Andrew and Ray, but things as they go through your awareness as well. And you have the courage to just express them and throw them out there for just the chance that perhaps somebody's going to grab onto it and do something with it. And we would love to do that as often as we can. And so these call-in shows are really a great way for you to participate, to help inspire us, to help us learn and grow as we go forward. So if you ever have a chance to join us during one of these call-in shows, please do. It absolutely is worth it. And we really enjoy it just from a selfish point of view. I have a really good time talking to all of you. So if you want to just come to the table and entertain me, then I'm deeply grateful.
Perfect timing because I just got that story up. And yeah, I love the call-in shows because it's funny too how much someone will come on talking about something or give an example of something that had happened and how much it'll resonate with someone listening, resonate with us or something that we're going through. And it makes me wonder just how much what we're going through isn't a separate experience at all. Like even the feelings that we have or the underlying feelings, be it in an immediate situation, but also just in general, in reality, like across the country, across the world, across the continent, across like fucking everything. Like if there isn't an actual disconnect between anything, then we are all going through a variation of the same experience at all times. So it's almost like you can know what's happening to some degree via yourself, like what you're going through, but it can't be from the perspective of, oh, this is me separately going through it, or the thought like, oh, this is me going through something and everyone's going through the exact same thing in the exact same way. It's like it may be the same thing, but in the recognition that we're going through every variation of every experience and everything is varied. It's like everything's the same experience, but it's very intricately varied. And so no two situations within a singular situation can be the same because it's a variation of it. Like think about your body. It's all your body, but nothing is exactly the same as anything else. But so if you get really close, if you take a fucking like magnifying glass and look at your skin, you'll see, oh, that looks entirely different than how it looks from my perspective now, which is, I don't know, 3 feet, including the reflection that I'm seeing myself or looking at Ray. And so it's almost like everything being those as above, so below, cycles within cycles. We see, you stare at your body very close up with a magnifying glass, and it looks like an entirely different thing. And that's just kind of what we're going through. It's like we're going through our experience from the perspective of being really zoomed in on a specific part of a specific cell in our body, thinking that we're separate. Because you zoom in close enough and your body probably will look entirely separate. Like those cells do look separate. It looks like there's space. The atoms are 99% empty space. So you get close enough to anything. It's like, oh no, that's That's totally different. What do you mean? It's totally separate. Totally different. You zoom out though, and it's not so much. You can see it, on a plane where you're not too far from the ground, so you can see the cars going, and there's a flow to things, and it very much looks like a fucking ant colony or something. And we see that, we see them moving in a straight line, and then we look at humans and see everything differently. We look at ourselves and think we're so inherently divided from everything, and I'm going through this experience. No one gets me. No one understands me. No one will ever understand what I'm dealing with, what I'm going through. And yet, from one perspective, sure, because it's your unique experience, but it's not even as unique as you'd think. And we're almost pushing that narrative that it is so unique by being so disconnected from each other. Like, we're getting further and further apart in the sense of having shared experiences, or even just talking about the depths of this experience itself. And so anyway, that's my roundabout way of saying that I too enjoy the call-in shows, and because it brings you closer to realizing that, maybe this isn't so separate. Maybe this experience isn't so divided. Maybe there's actually quite a bit of overlap in this experience throughout myself.
And it's really just comes down to perception. Like, it really just comes down to how caught up in any one perception are you? Because if you're not caught up in any one perception as truth, then you're understanding that you're not what you perceive yourself to be. You're simply what is. And the experience of being what is has a great deal of commonality for anybody who's willing to look at it. Here's the thing. We're so caught up in our identity and idea of ourself that it's easy to look at ourselves as being separate. It's easy to see ourselves as not the same because we're so different, until you let go of all of those details and you look at the commonality that you are the awareness of reality itself, that I am the awareness of reality itself. Together, we are what is. We are what is. And that is just you being what is, and me being what is. But from you, it's just all you. And for me, it's just all me. And we're both right, and neither of us. Because the idea of what I mean by you or me is incorrect. So everything gets really weird at that point. I wanted to say that, again, this is a call-in show. So rather than us getting carried away with all of this stuff, I am just going to throw up a link here on the screen, mention everybody that you can join us on the show. If you'd like to, go to dualisticunity.com/live. You can join us for up to 10 minutes, be a part of the episode, ask a question, share an insight, or just, tell us about your day. Whatever you'd like to do, really. It's your 10 minutes. And of course, it contributes to the episode, and everybody else in the community gets to hear it later, which is always great because we get to take what we can from it. That's really all this is about, is taking what you can from it. And for me, as I was just saying, it really just comes down to understanding that I am not what I think I am. And what remains is whatever it is that's thinking. And not just thinking, but being, whatever that's experiencing, feeling, the awareness of myself and all that that entails. That's all that remains, when I'm not holding on to a perception of what I am. Because any perception of what I am requires a me to perceive and a something else to perceive it against. So none of them can be the whole truth. None of them can truly encompass the fact that the observer and the observed are one. That's the point. So keeping that in mind, it's incredible how much you can relate to people. It's incredible how much we all have to say when you start looking at it as, okay, like, let's just break this down. Instead of it being about my narrative, Ray's day, for example, how about the experience of Ray's day? How about the experience of doubting and fearing and looking at the future and looking at the past and judging myself? Like, look at that. Look at the fact that that's such a big part of my life, rather than what clothes I wear, what car I own, where I live, what color skin I have. You see, those are all the things, the details that drive us apart, because we're not looking at the underlying unifying foundation underneath it, which is consciousness, the experience of being aware of yourself and all of the pitfalls that go with that. Because if you're aware of yourself, that means you can also conceptualize yourself, and that is hell. In that is the illusion that we tend to get lost in. And all of us are capable of doing it. All of us. And often we do. And then as we start to recognize that, we have things to say about it. And that's why this show can be so valuable. So if you have things to say, about recognizing how much you've been tripping yourself up. We would love to talk to you because that's all we're talking about here.
And you got things to say too. You got things to say. Even if you're telling yourself that you don't have things to say, that's something to say, right? Even if you're concerned about whether or not you have something to say, or concerned about coming on here, or nervous or worried, like that's something you can talk about. We talk about that all the time. I'm feeling kind of shitty today, uncomfortable today, whatever. Like how many times, like, you got to go through it to, there's not a point where it becomes not uncomfortable by not doing it. That change doesn't happen. Like it's got to be something that you do. And it's funny with I mean, I don't know if funny is the right word. It's interesting how we can come up with these ideas because we come up with these ideas of finality and endpoints and certainty and spots where we overcome certain things or get so good at something that there's never any concern anymore. And because we hold on to that idea, it actually makes the experience of overcoming something, because it's not to say that you do necessarily, but there are ways of not holding on to the same bullshit. But as long as we hold on to the idea that there's a point where it is overcome and it's a finality and it's objectively finished, done, overcome, never have to think about it again, never have to worry about it again, never have to consider it again, it almost makes it feel further away. But the reality being that, conceptualizing yourself, thinking about yourself, going through the shit, feeling free, it's all here now. There's no finality to it. There's no point where you're done dealing with stuff, going through stuff. And so the more I've been able to recognize that, the less weight I have on going through things or different perspectives or take myself very seriously, because I know that, all right, well, there's not a point that this is overcome. So the opportunity is right here. Because if I think there's a point where it's overcome and I don't think that I'm there, it can feel very, very, very far away. But that point is always right now. And there's things that we do that one way or the other reinforce it. Like the way, what was the Lorax quote? The way the tree leans is the way it falls, essentially. And so what I think I didn't fully realize, I don't know, maybe like a year ago, was that this very much, recognizing that you're not what you think. It's not just something you can think about. It's like an all-encompassing way of being, more so. And there's things that you do that reinforce one way or the other what you do or you don't think you are. And it's not to say that you have to maintain that. Like you can recognize that you're not the story that you're telling yourself in any situation. But if you keep going back to it to feel better, if you keep running back to it in order to feel better about certain things, as opposed to just looking at the things and not being so afraid of the darkness or the depths, then that story is going to have more gravity to it, as long as you're telling yourself a story in certain situations about certain things. Like that's going to build, it's almost an investment in that. So then it'll have a harsher pull. So, yeah, we got our first call in. Yes.
Not only that, but I've recognized that I did not enable the waiting list or the waiting room on this. So we're about to have a whole bunch of people come into this episode at the same time. This is going to be fun. Oh, yes. This is kind of like an unexpected Royal Rumble. Here we go, for sure. To everybody who's about to jump in here, we appreciate you being here. This was definitely not expected. So we're very happy about the unexpected development. I thought to myself, did I enable the waiting room? And realized I didn't. And I went to change it. And I thought I had changed it. It is not changed. In fact, everybody is about to walk in here to a group discussion. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our impromptu roundtable. Nobody was expecting this to happen, but I'm glad you're all here. If you'd like to be on the screen, you can be. Thank you to everybody who's watching. If you would like to join, this meeting of the minds, you can do so at dualistiCunity.com/live. Now, for everybody who hasn't done this before, typically, if you would like to raise your hand and add something to the conversation, please do. There's a little raise hand button in the reactions section. Aside from that, we're just going to go around the table. If you can keep yourself muted until you're talking, of course, it does help so that everybody can get their thoughts off their plate. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for this absolutely unexpected, almost Patreon group. This is awesome. Hello, everyone.
Let's get ready to rumble. All of a sudden I see, well, because usually in the call-in show, it's like with there'll be something and I'm like, oh, okay, Amanda got let in quick here. And then all of a sudden, like Sarah and then Roy and then Jake is like, oh shit, all right, let's go. And it's funny because it's like we have no rigidity to these things. It's like, yeah, we were planning on a call-in show, and now we have 6 people on the call, and now it's a roundtable Patreon call, and that's the beauty of entrepreneurship in action. We roll with it. Jake, what is up, man?
Good to see you, man.
What's up, man? How's it going? Happy Halloween to everyone. What was funny is, so I had a reminder on my phone today about this call-in show, and I was like going back and forth, and I was like, am I going to do it? Am I not going to do it? Am I just setting the reminder almost as almost like that's validating enough just to set the reminder? That's something that, like, oh, at least I did that. I can feel good about that. And I was leaving work, and I was talking to my dad at work, and my phone buzzed, and I looked, and it was the reminder. And like, I instantly, like, my hands started sweating. Like, this is just a reminder, right? I'm not even in it. And my hands started sweating, my heart started racing, and my mind just went to the most insane scenarios, like, that don't even, couldn't even happen. And I was sitting there, and I lost my train of thought talking to my dad, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is on my mind now, and I can't think of anything else. And I'd sort of been thinking about it all day. And when I experience anxiety, a lot of the times it would be the ruminating thoughts and the constant bombardment of, like, negative thoughts or worst case scenarios, and my heart would just, like, beat out of my chest. And it almost feels like, it feels so intense that you almost think other people would be feeling it because of how intense it's feeling. So you think it's so noticeable. And I had this, like, sort of, not epiphany, but, like, I was sitting at work today, and I was like, what's funny, like, my heart could race, I could, start sweating or any of that, but I could still talk. Like, I could just do it anyway. And that sounds super simple, and, like, I've heard it all my life, and I've always been like, yeah, of course, like, duh, like, it's easy to say that, and that was just me getting angry at myself. Because and so I was like, I could just join anyway. I could join even and just pass out, like, if it happened, like, but I could just join and start talking. And I was watching before, like, 10 minutes ago, I was watching y'all, and I wasn't going to join. And then, Andrew, you said, there's never going to be a time where it's okay, to where all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, no more anxiety, it's a perfect, let me join now. And so I just joined real quick, and I was like, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to get put on the spot, and it is what it is. But it's funny, the physical, your mind almost, like, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like, you'll try to justify why your anxiety doesn't stop you, and then your mind will tell you why that justification, like, is flawed or not true. And so it's like, you've got layer upon layer upon layer of reasons why, and it's like, whether it's a good reason why, they're just they're just thoughts. Like, none of them are the truth. You don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what's good for you. And before, I think the first time I spoke in any of this is a couple days ago. And when I think back to high school, I couldn't even imagine speaking in front of, like, a room of 4 people. I would freak out, and let alone being on a podcast and talking, and I'm like, oh, what if my fears? Well, what if a family member stumbles upon this while I'm happen to be on it, and they see it and they judge me, and they go to my family and my friends, and like my mind literally, like I'm the center of everyone's fucking world, like, and it's just crazy. Like even now, the symptoms are still there. Like I can hardly hold my phone because my hands are sweating and my heart's like beating out of my chest, but I'm like, I can still talk, and whether I have anything to say or not, I'll just say whatever comes to mind. And if nothing came to mind, then I just wouldn't say anything, but there's always something to say, like you said, so I just wanted to hop on and just say that. And so that's all. I'll try to keep it more brief today, but that's all.
And you fucking nailed it. It's so funny, because that's exactly how it comes across. And I know from doing the podcast, sometimes we'll go through something and I'll be trying to get something out, and I know I'm just beating around the bush. Like to me, I'm like, oh God, this is taking so long. And then afterwards I'll listen to it in hindsight and I'll go, that was pretty good. Like, I'm not sure if I could have gotten there without walking through those steps. I'm just being overly harsh on myself. But what's funny is that nobody else would know anything like that. It's like my daughter, she plays violin, and she gets, kind of hard on herself about little changes or little errors that nobody else would hear. Like nobody other than somebody who's playing and practicing violin, listening for it, would hear. Right. And that's the funniest part, is that, that's why they tell you when playing an instrument, just keep playing. Right. Like, don't let it trip you up. Just keep playing. Because most of the time people are just like, yeah, like they don't know, but you are going through hell in your head. Right. And so, yeah, you could go back and forth about reasons. This is why I don't like the pros and cons game. I remember when I learned that as a teenager, like, always weigh the pros and cons. And after a while, I'm like, these seem biased. Like they always seem to lean towards the side that I want them to, So, and that was that. After a while, I'm just like, this is just a stupid game, and it's taking up a lot of time. I may as well just, flip a coin. I may as well just plunge forward and see what the fuck,
Yeah, I might as well make a pros and cons list about my pros and cons list at that point. Like, it's like, where do you stop? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, right. It's so fucking funny. It's even funnier how someone, as they're talking, will then talk about how, even Jake, just now, you're like, oh, my hands are sweating, my heart's pounding. Like, I would have had no fucking idea. I would have thought that you were just coming on here, chilling, like relax as fuck. Like, I'm telling you right now, like, it's unnoticeable. And it probably seems the same for me. Like, there's so many times, as much as we do all this shit, like, someone else will be talking. There'll be a point, especially like a few weeks ago, where I was just lost in fucking concern, fear, worry, and all about me, all about myself and how I was going to be looked at, perceived, blah, 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 blah. And I was like missing everything. And I was going through all this stuff, and it can be noticeable to a point, but even then it's still like, I felt like I was in a clouded world, and maybe it was slightly noticeable, but we go through certain things, and even same thing as Ray goes through, like, as I'm talking, there'll be points where I'm like, oh, fuck, I have no idea what I'm saying. Is this even making any sense? Especially at like our live retreat episodes. Like I'll go in, like when we're at a retreat, like I'll have sort of like a buildup of energy going through it. And I call it that now. I used to call it anxiety or worry or whatever, but it really is just a lot of energy. And it's like, yeah, you're about to go do something and talk about stuff. And the whole time, pretty much the whole time we're idea if anything is making anything. It's not making sense to me because I almost can't even hear myself because I'm not necessarily coming up with a thought that then is expressed or a consideration that's then expressed. It's just kind of like shit's coming out and it's going. And I've gotten a lot more comfortable with letting that be the case. Like it doesn't have to make sense to me for it to make sense. Like it doesn't have to be clear to me for it to be clear. And that's a really funny thing. Like it's always been through the filter of my idea, my opinion, my perception. And if it's not clear to me, then it couldn't possibly be clear. But you can just talk. You can just say things. You can just express what's on your mind, and odds are it'll land with someone. And if it doesn't, so what? Everything we say isn't meant to, hit home, be the clearest thing ever, be the deepest insight ever. Sometimes you can just talk and then no one responds and then everyone moves on. And then it's like, yeah, cool. That's great. And like, no one thinks twice about it because most of the time they're just like, ready for their own time to talk or whatever, but people are going to take what they take from it, and people are going to resonate with things they resonate, and you have no idea what that's going to be anyway. So just because it's clear to me, or I think it's articulated well, doesn't mean that it's going to be. There could be something that I'm like, oh fuck, I said that well. That was some good shit. And no one will have any idea. Like no one will resonate with it at all. Like maybe it'll not be clear to someone. Maybe it won't hit, it won't land, whatever. But like then I feel good about it, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of funny because it could be, hit home so much more for something that I then am concerned about and am worried about. So yeah, uncertainty. It's a crazy motherfucker, but it's nice when you realize just how uncertain it is, because then it's harder to, get that buildup and concern for what I'm saying and what it means, or what I think that it's meaning and getting across.
Yeah, it's so important not to label things anxiety or nervousness. It really is. And it's funny because once you stop doing it, or rather once you start getting into the practice of not doing it, and you build a little gap first, right? Then all of a sudden you're sitting in this space, you're like, oh, I can feel all that. Like I can feel it on my skin. I can feel it in my heart. You can feel all of that, but you're like, I don't know what it is though. Like, I just know it's really catching my attention. Right. And that's it. It's really catching my attention. And I don't know how to feel about it. But immediately, because it's an unknown, we're like, therefore it's bad. I'm afraid. It's like, no, you're afraid of the feeling. The feeling wasn't fear to begin with. Right. It was just a feeling. And I find it so interesting, but you have to develop that gap first. Like, it's one thing to say it, it's like, oh, it's just a feeling. But if you're in the habit of going, I'm nervous, it's going to take you a little while to go, no, it's not anxiety. It's just, I don't know what it is. And you're going to have to go through that practice for a little bit. But, enough time goes by and there's a gap, a sizable gap where you're like, I honestly don't know what that is. And you have a chance to reassess. But it's just that reaction to things. We think our reactions are the things after a while because we've been reacting that way for so long. Sarah, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Okay. I have a lot of stuff that was coming up for me, just like listening to the beginning. I keep like putting my shirt on my armpits because I also keep sweating a lot. So I'm having the same experience as you, Jake. Where my body, like as soon as I like got on the Zoom, it was like just like going crazy about everything. And I love what you said about like not labeling things anxiety or like fear or anything like that, because then it's like if you do just approach it as like, okay, I'm having a lot of sensations in my body, and like there's times where like maybe like because of my own labeling I'm creating this perception and I put this filter on the sensation rather than like feeling the sensation for what it is. And like I experienced it even like with the weather. Like today there was so much change in the weather. Like in the morning it was super cloudy and then it rained and like now it's snowing and then the sun came out and then it was snowing again, and like our bodies are the exact same way. We're like, maybe we're snowing or we're raining or whatever it is. And it's only like bad or good if we're like, oh, I kind of like snow because whatever reason we have about loving snow or whatever reason we have about loving sunlight. But it doesn't even matter because like it's always going to keep changing anyway. And then it made me think of like at the beginning too, when we were talking about you guys were talking about how we create this like separation and experience where like there's times where I'll have people be like, I'll never understand that. And I'm like, I don't know, because like I feel like if you zoom out enough and you like allow yourself to see yourself in it, like you would understand it. Like you don't have to live the exact same experience to be like, oh, I get what you're going through. Because like nobody escapes like the full range of human experience. And then when we try to create this like separation, like I even think about like people that I hang out with, don't hang out with. And it's like, okay, like what about those people do I not want to see in myself because I reject that within myself, and like even getting on the Zoom and having the courage to be like, okay, like I have something to say, or like I want to whatever comes up, there's a part of me that's like, oh, Sarah, stop being such a little attention whore. And it's like, well, why do I feel bad about like wanting attention or like having something to share in like a group where like that's the whole purpose? And like there's that invitation, and then I think it's of my childhood and like how classmates would make fun of me for like being a goody two-shoes at school or like knowing the answer and just like shouting it out and everybody's like, shut the fuck up. You're like, oh my God, like shame instantly. And then like I'll see somebody else like wanting attention and be like, fucking bitch just wants attention. And it's like, no, like it's literally just like they're doing their thing and like they're so good for doing their thing. And like me wanting to share is just me doing my thing. And like why is it such a problem for people to just be who they are and like change in how they be? Because that's just like how life works. And then like we have to create this distortion around like, oh, like they're bad or I'm better or they're worse. And like that's where the ego comes in. It's like, I'll push you down so that I can like come up a little bit higher and like feel better about myself. Because I don't want to admit that I'm like on the exact same level as you because I can't accept that part of myself. And then it's just like the vicious cycle of like, you suck and like you're good and just playing the comparison game where like there's no comparison at all. Like we all go through the human experience. So, and then like Jake, when you said about like, what if my family sees this and they're like, oh, like, I totally get that. Because I posted on TikTok, which I'm so proud of myself about because I've been putting it off out of fear. And I had that exact same thought where I was like, well, what if people that knew me like 10 years ago see this? And I was like, who cares? I'm having fun with these videos. It's like, who actually cares? If it's about them, then like that's where the problem is. Where it's like, what's my intention for this? Do I just want to have fun? Yeah. Am I having fun? Amazing. Goal achieved. Like nothing else has to come into that bubble and like ruin the experience. And if it does, I can also have okay, like it's snowing outside and like it's fine. It'll start raining later. If that makes any sense. Thank you.
No, thank you. I just wanted to say, I went through the same thing as we started the podcast. I don't think about it anymore, but once upon a time, it's like, oh man, people from my past are going to see this. And I'm like, right, but they judged me anyway. So, I mean, at the very least, they're just going to go like, it's fucking Ray. And then they're going to stop watching. It's like, if you fuckers stick around, I'll give you a lot more to take personally. Just hang out, but they're not gonna. So I figure, I'm saving them and me time by just being myself. It's like, yep, still me. Are you still you? Have you changed? Are you willing to give this a shot and realize, and stop giving me so much power over you? God, I love that. You really pissed me off. Wow, that's a lack of responsibility. You don't have to let me piss you off. You could laugh in my face. I'm laughing in yours.
Right. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was living inside of your head so often. And you're thinking about me all of the time and all of the anger that comes with that. But it's funny with the high school situations or people call it things that it's like, it's such a Lord of the Flies type situation when we're saying things just like, and so clear, especially at that age, we don't even have the wherewithal to understand that everything that we're shouting out, judging is just self-judgment too. Like it's just, and to your point, Sarah, like the people that we don't want to hang out with or see, it's like, what are we avoiding in them? Like even the almost like the fallacy of liking or not liking someone is, it's like, sure, yeah, that opinion can be there. You can come up with reasons, but it's still just assumptions that I'm settling upon that I can very easily justify, like, oh, I'm not going to hang with them, or I want to hang with them. And it's like, have you ever really dug into the reasons why you do or you don't want to do any of those things? And it's kind of funny when you do, or it's like, oh, that is, I don't know, maybe it is something I'm avoiding or someone you're, jealous of or angry of. Like it's always coming from me. And I can pin it on something else. I can point to something else. I can pass responsibility off to something else, but it's still my experience that it's stemming from. And so if I'm good prioritizing my experience and the things that and my sort of freedom and maintaining that, then there doesn't need to be so many fears and concerns. Like I'm good with myself right now. Like if I'm good with myself acting the way that I act, then other people's, whether they're good with it or not, is more or less irrelevant. Like it doesn't have the same relevance anymore. But if instead of me being okay or not okay with myself, it's always considering, yeah, but how are they doing? How are they living? How are they acting? And I have to curate my experience to make sure that they aren't judgmental. Like, is that what I'm trying to do? Is trying to get someone else to not be judgmental by shielding myself, by suppressing myself, because I'm so concerned about how they're living and what they're doing. Like I have no control over whether they're going to judge. They could judge me for all sorts of things, and I have no guarantees. There's no way I can possibly act. I can do, be the loudest person in the room or the quietest person in the room, and there's still the opportunity to be judged. So there's no way to avoid that. And if I'm thinking like, oh, I don't want them to be a judgmental person, so I'm going to act in a way that gets them to not be judgmental. It's like, as I'm saying it out loud, that makes very, very little fucking sense, because there's no way of doing it. And so all of these things start to break down a little bit more when you're willing to just sit in it and actually consider, like, what am I really doing? Like, what am I really trying to do by getting someone by avoiding judgment or trying to get people to like me? It's trying to so drastically manipulate their experience with the illusion that I have control over the way that they respond to me, which there's none of. Like there's zero control over that, which is funny.
Yeah. And it makes me think of like what the cons and pros list thing about like hanging out with people too, where it's like, well, like I don't like this person for X, Y, and Z reason, but like even that is just like us trying to figure out like a reason why not to hang out with that person, because something unconsciously within ourselves is like telling us to avoid it, or like we just simply don't want to like put ourselves in a situation that opens us to see ourselves in a different light, because we want to control our own identity or who we are and our own perception of ourselves. And then we want to control it so badly that we then go and like try to control our perception of ourselves in other people's heads too, and be like, okay, like let me just act perfectly so that you see this like angle of who I am, where it's like that's not actually who you are. Like you might be different in different interactions with different people because they like awaken something different in yourself because of the mirror that they are with you, but it's unavoidable that you're going to see yourself everywhere you go.
Well said. Yeah. Everywhere, every interaction, all the time, seeing anything else ever. So yeah, well said, Sarah. Roy.
Good to see you, man. Thank you for joining us for this impromptu party.
Yeah, it was like I was doubting a lot because I'm already in bed. I'm gonna sleep in like I don't know, 20 minutes maybe. But I was like, yeah, I was following the Twitch call, and I was like, yeah, can either follow it or hop on. Would be nice. Yeah, so Andrew, you were talking about experience about college or like school stuff, and I was like, something that came up was like, do you guys remember the worst experience that classmates had that maybe have embarrassed them? Can you remember situations where there happened something to your classmates or to people on your school that were this impacting that you still know it until this day? Can you remember some of that stuff? And I was like, I can. I just can. So the things that you remember about yourself back in the day, the things you did wrong, or the things you thought that were embarrassing to do you think that somebody else will remember that? I don't think so. Like maybe one person far away that you never speak to again will remember some stuff, but it's like, why would it even bother? It doesn't matter anymore. So yeah, that was one thing I want to tap on. And yeah, the other thing, some of you guys know that I'm planning to go to Canada, and I just want to tell you guys that I today I sold my car that's going to provide me to go there. So I'm going to go to the next steps. So that's a big thing. Yay. And at the same time, I was like, I want to touch on the gap that Ray's talking about. So the gap, making the gap between a feeling that's already there and the narrative that comes later. Because like when I'm in this state of peace or rest, or however you want to call it, there's nothing going on, or there's not much going on, and like the lessons are easy to handle, I guess. But like for the last few days, I've been back in some shit, and like that zooming in on the feeling that's already there, making it a story. Yeah, it looks the same, it feels the same as last year around this time. But like that kind of stuff is like, and I can laugh about it now, but it's like it feels really hard sometimes throughout the day. But it's that gap. Um, if you found yourself going back in and back out of there, is it still like, do you guys still, yeah, how do I say this? Practice it the same way you did before? Like, or deal with it the same way you did before? That's just what I want to ask, I guess.
Before what? Like
Yeah, like,
before previously in my life?
yeah, like if I'm listening to my narrative, it's like, yeah, fuck, man, this is the 100th time I been in the same situation.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
Thing.
it's shifted from something like, I think back, at previous points, it was something that I maintained a perspective of. It wasn't, like I was afraid of it, and there was ways of avoiding it. And yeah, that's a good point too. That's a narrative right there on top of the narrative.
Yeah.
But for me, at least recently, it's just been that I'm not so afraid of quote unquote the shit. And so if I don't have the perspective that the shit shouldn't be there, or that the shit is the thing that I think it is, or that I know that there's such a thing as being in the shit, like if I'm not worried about it, because you realize that that's where perspectives are being gained, like empathy is being derived from. And so it's not something like, if I'm feeling certain things, there's not a desire to like feel something else. And so without that, then it just is what it is. And it's only the shit when you're trying to get out of it. Like if you're not trying to escape it, or run from it, or feel differently than you are, then it's not really the shit in the same way. Like if you're like, oh, I can roll around in the shit, then it shifts very quickly. But it's, the running from it, the idea that I should be over it, out of it, done with it. This shouldn't be happening. And I know that. And I wish that it wasn't. My life would be better if it wasn't. Like, that's all stories on top of stories as well. Right.
Yeah, and it's like, no, I don't remember what I want to say. No,
I got
it's
something.
gone.
I think it's really important to recognize that the real bitch about all of this is the fact that you're always changing unless you're telling yourself that you are something. Right. So as you're dealing with something like earlier, you're like, I'm going back to what I was dealing with a year ago. Of course you're not. Of course you're not. It's not even possible. Of course it's not possible. You're a different person. You've grown. You've done stuff. There's no way that you're experiencing what you did a year ago. There's no way. It's not exactly the same. It's not. It might be similar. It might be similar, but it's not the same. But the more you tell yourself it is the same, the more you feel stuck, the more you feel defeated, the less you feel like you have any power over your life whatsoever. And then that justifies paralysis. Right. So the more you tell yourself you're fucked, the more fucked you are. That very much is the crux.
And at the same time, that was what I want to tell, as like, I want to like give into the feelings that are there. I want to like relax in the feelings and the emotions that are already there. But at the same time, I don't want to label them. That's the whole point I wanted to. I don't like feeling sad or feeling depressed or feeling like, do I need to label it to feel what I'm already feeling? Fuck no, I don't need to do that.
Correct. You do not need to do that, because with doing that comes all kinds of other shit that goes with that. I'm depressed, therefore, there's something wrong with me. It's like, you're not. You're just kind of experiencing a depressing thought. It doesn't mean anything about you, right? And that's it. It's just watch that shit. Like, just watch the labels and how much power you give them over you. Right? They're just experiences, but you're getting this. So the whole trick now is just to keep going, right? And just to keep watching how often you're telling yourself, no, I'm not doing it well. I'm not changing. Of course you're changing. Of course you're changing. If at any point you're like, I'm still struggling with that, it's like, no, it's passing. You're working on it. If you weren't working on it, it wouldn't bother you. Right? There's something about it that's already being processed. You just need to let go and let it process. Things are not as simple as we'd like them to be. It's not like understanding yourself is suddenly like, oh shit, I got it now. It's this ongoing process of understanding more and more and more about yourself. But again, you are change. You are change until you tell yourself you're something from the past, which is all your memories are, which all your ideas are something in the past, something based on what you think you've done previously or what you think you've been previously. It's never you. It's never you. So the reality is you're not dealing with the same thing you were last year. You're not even dealing with the same thing you were 5 minutes ago. It means you're always changing. Just sit through it. Sit through it and let it pass. Or you could slam on the brakes and get stuck in there for a few days.
Can let the brakes go. It's okay.
Woo!
Yeah, cut those brakes. For any Always Sunny fans out there, the episode where Charlie cuts the brakes, he's like, "Wild card, bitches!" Yeah, from the back of the car, because he's designated the wild card of the bunch, and so he just starts pushing wild card behavior. And so they're driving down a hill. And they're like, fuck, the brakes aren't working. Like, that's because I cut the brakes. Wild card, bitches. Yeah, it's a good scene. Anyway, Amanda, what is up?
Oh, snap. I am listening intently. I just made a fresh cup of coffee and I'm up. So here we go. What came to mind when I was listening to everyone speaking was just like the anatomy of our minds and how fear and excitement live in the same place, or they arrive from the same place, your amygdala, the center of your emotions. And so it's so funny that physiologically they have the same response. Your pupils dilate when you're scared and when you're excited. Your palms sweat when you're scared and when you're excited. Your heart races more when you're scared and when you're excited. So your body responds in the same way, or with the same kind of expression. And it's just our mind that interprets that experience. And so as much as you're feeling scared. Like, so the example that comes to mind is like when I have jumped off a cliff into a river, and it's probably maybe 40 feet. And every time I jump, I am both excited and scared, because I'm like, oh shit. Like, you know, there's only so much that you can do, because I don't necessarily want the feeling of being nervous or fearful to leave, because that adds to the excitement that I'm feeling as I'm jumping off of a cliff that I've jumped 100,000 times over my childhood and my teenage years. And every single time I go to jump, I'm like, oh shit, are we really, like, are we too old for this? You know, like, no, we're not too old for this. Like, we have done this jump 1,000 times. We are scared and we are excited. It is happening in the same place in my brain, but it's up to me to interpret that experience. You know, am I going to label that feeling scared, or am I going to say that I'm excited? Am I okay with feeling both of them? Because I have felt both when I've jumped, and I've survived every single jump. And so when I'm metaphorically jumping, it feels familiar to both feel scared and excited at the same time. And so I'm getting more comfortable feeling both at the same time, because technically both are always available. And so when I'm experiencing fear, it's like, I'm nervous, I'm scared, and so what? So what? It doesn't mean anything unless I say it means something. So it's up to me to decide, where do I want to take this physical experience? You know, I am the narrator of my story. And so how do I want to describe this moment? And it's interesting, because when I was younger, I used to think that I could only feel scared or excited. And I didn't realize how many times I always felt both. And so now that I'm a little older and I look back, I think I've always felt both. And take public speaking, like, it's not something that I feel that I focus on the nerves as much, because I've done it so often. So when we were, there was a live show the other day, and somebody asked, you know, I have a fear of public speaking. Anybody have advice? And I was like, do it more. That was literally all I said. I was like, do it more, because that's the only way that you can see that you're full of shit, when you tell yourself you can't do it. As much as I could tell you that you're full of shit, it's not going to stick as much. But when you see that you're full of shit, when you see that you are telling yourself that you can't do something, and that is nothing more than just telling yourself, you haven't proved it to yourself that you couldn't do it. And when you actually do it, you see how little meaning your words could have. And because you think that when you say something to yourself, like, that's it, that's set in stone, I have said it once, I have proclaimed it, and it shall always be true. Bullshit. It is not always true. Just because I say a story over and over doesn't mean I can't change that story on the 1 millionth time I say it. It doesn't matter how many times I've said that story. I can change the story at any point. And it doesn't matter how much I believed all the other iterations, how many times I believed all the other times I told myself. Like, at any point I can start fresh, because every moment is a blank canvas. And I only think that it's not blank because I paint so fucking quickly. But if I were to actually take a moment to notice that I actually paint that quickly, then I could notice that every moment is blank, and every moment doesn't even have Amanda in it unless I bring that character to the moment. Let's take, for example, when I wake up in the morning, the second that I have just woken up, I have just pressed snooze on my alarm, I'm not thinking about Amanda. I'm not thinking, oh, Amanda just pressed snooze. No one said that in my head. No one said, Amanda, press this button. So technically in that moment, there is no Amanda, there is no story. And so isn't every other moment exactly like that, even though I am so quick that I can paint the canvas so fast that I don't even notice the strokes? So that moment in the morning where I don't do anything, where the moment is as blank as it could be, when I haven't done anything, that moment is always like that. Or every single new moment that I end up encountering is always like that. And so it's just knowing that, yes, I have believed the stories because I told them, and I forgot how good I could be at telling stories and how much I could believe it. And that's okay, because I love telling stories. I love the drama. I love just saying, now I proclaim it, like the drama. I love it. And I also can admit to myself that I like to be obsessively think about the character Amanda. Let's not get it twisted. You want to know why we're always in that story? Why we're always stuck? Because we like it. We like to obsessively think about our character. So let's not get it twisted. I'm not here by accident. Oh, we slipped on a banana peel. There's the story of Amanda again. No, 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 no. We like it. And that's okay too, as long as we can admit that we like to torture ourselves a little bit and that we also like remembering that we don't have to. And so I like both of it. It's like I'm in like a almost a semi-abusive relationship with the character Amanda. Like I beat it up sometimes, but then I'm like, we don't have to beat it up. And I'm like, okay, we'll take a break from that. But then we end up beating it up again. And I was like, oh shit, but that was a good uppercut. That was good, you know? And I'm like commenting my own way of fucking up my own character. And it's just all a part of it because you are the experience of you. So if you don't like the experience that you're having, why don't you talk to the chef? He's in the mirror. Or she's in the mirror, you know? Why don't you talk to the chef about that meal that you don't like tasting? And then you can remember we can change the seasoning at any point. And so it's just a matter of what are you creating? Are you holding on to the idea? Are you pretending that you're helpless? And the question I've been loving asking myself lately is if I'm so scared of getting caught up in a story, how can I be so scared that I can get caught up in a story that I'm making and yet I'm helpless? So I have this power to get myself sucked into the story, but somehow I'm helpless in that story. The math is not adding up because I can't have the power to both trap myself and then not unlock the cage. You know, either I'm helpless and we don't do anything, or it's all on us and I can walk out at any point. So that's what kind of calls me out, or I like calling myself out because that reminds me it's not that I'm stuck, it's that I like the experience of being stuck. And when I can admit that, it's like, okay, you know what we'd like to do? Let's go make some mac and cheese. I'm sick of this story right now. I'm hungry. Let's go do something else. And so that's the thing, is that I don't try to tell myself that I won't do it again, that it's a bad thing that I do it. I admit that I did it. And then I decide, do I want to keep doing that? Maybe later. And then I transition into doing something else. And that's literally the experience as it feels for me at this moment. Ask me in 5 days how it feels, and we might have a new story.
Oh man. And we just keep going through it. And this it's funny if I were to take that third person perspective and be like, oh, that's some quite the psychological abuse and certainty that we're coming up with. And the judgment can be just incredible moment to moment. And yet it's still just me making up all the things that are wrong, assuming the things that are wrong, and then feeling victim. It's like constantly fucking victim to myself. It's really laughable when you spell it out that no one's forcing me to do any of these things, and no one's ever going to force me to stop. It's like, yeah, it's kind of all just on me. If I want to keep telling myself a story and making assumptions about what I can and can't do, what I should or shouldn't be able to do, and like that there is even a bar to live up to. It's like, oh, I need a bar. Because what would I measure myself against if I didn't maintain this bar that was never where I was? It's like a bar that has, it's like when magnets are repellent. It's like that's where my bar always lies. It's always repellent to where I'm at and can never match up with where I'm at. But it's me creating the bar. Like I'm making up the bar in my head, making up the expectation of where I should be at, what I should be good at by now, what I should be able to have accomplished or done or overcome or dealt with, or all of these fucking assumptions, making them up as I go. And yet it's like, it's not even that there's anything to overcome. It's just, I can just stop making up stories, and then I won't have to overcome anything if I'm not telling myself what I have to overcome or that I shouldn't be going through some experience. And it's always just that assumption, like I shouldn't be going through this because of what? Because I have an expectation of this. Do you have to have that expectation? Is that necessary to be where you're at, to live? Like, well, no. Like, all right, well, there's some stuff there. Yeah. Maybe look at that. Maybe look at the expectations that you have of yourself and the thought that, you shouldn't be in the spot that you're in for some made up reason. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. Oh, I'm not comfortable right now. Do you always think you should be comfortable? Like, do I think I should never be worried or nervous or scared or feeling like I'm down in the dumps. Like that would be crazy to think that I should never, ever feel those things. Because if they're sometimes able to be on the table, then I don't have to fight them so much and don't have to expect myself to not go through them. And then there isn't so much fight to the experience. Just, yeah.
Could you imagine? I just want to put this out there. So let's just say that you never, ever experience self-judgment. You never experience that anxiety. You never experience any sense that you're less. You never feel insecure. You never experience any of that. You've never experienced any of that. Could you imagine what kind of a giant douchebag you would be to everybody else on this planet? To everyone else who's gone through that shit from day one. Could you imagine? You wouldn't be able to empathize with them. You'd have no basis of understanding. You'd be like, what? Everything's fine for me. Like, it would just, like, what are you complaining about? Like, it would be the funniest, most horrific fucking thing. And that's the point, is that we don't like what we're going through because, frankly, we don't see the point. We don't see the point. We're like, this sucks for no good reason. Because we don't want to recognize, no, it sucks for a very good reason. Sucks for a very good reason, because it is the necessary other side to the pendulum swing. It's a very big part of our existence on this planet. You'd have no joy if not for your pain, right? That's the whole point, is that you get both sides. There's no hot without cold, right? Both sides of the coin must exist, and you are duality embodied. That's what you are, right? So you may as well just dive in. Enjoy it, relax through it, but stop thinking that you shouldn't be experiencing all of these things that suddenly you can become aware of, because that's part of growing your awareness. That's part of maturing. You know, you were aware of a bunch of new things by the age of 16 that you had no comprehension of at the age of 10. That process has not changed. You are continuing to raise your awareness. It's just that as your awareness raises, your awareness raises, which means you take in both sides of the spectrum. There's more to think about and more for you to take seriously, more for you to think like, that shouldn't be there. And that's the danger of raising your awareness, is that you have more temptation to have an opinion rather than to be reasonable and understand that none of your opinions are the truth, including that this sucks and I shouldn't be going through it. Jay, good to see you, man. Glad you could join us.
Hey, thanks. This is pretty cool. Impromptu party. I like it. So I apologize. I had to eat my dinner on your recorded episode here, but it is what it is. Can you really hear me okay?
You are coming through a tad muffled.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Sounds like you're underwater or something.
Am I still underwater?
No, we can hear you now.
That's much
All right,
better.
great.
Yeah. Came up for air.
Yeah, so I'm loving this because I've been diving into a lot more about what you were talking about basically the uncomfortableness and not having to, whoa, watch out, that was deep, man. Not, not resisting the uncomfortableness of things that come up in life. Like if I'm living on a moment to moment basis, which is pretty much all that we have, like if I was just dropped in my body, like in this moment, and that's all I had was this moment, would I waste my time thinking about, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this right now? Or would I just accept it and then move forward? Right. And that's kind of, thanks, Mom. I love you. That's kind of the way I sort of view it, especially when I'm uncomfortable, because that's like change. Like if I'm feeling uncomfortable, like that's literally change happening right now. You know what I mean? So if I'm feeling like comfortable, that's kind of, I've already arrived where I'm at. You know what I mean? So I'm enjoying the discomfort that comes from trying new things. And story I had when I was new in sales. I think I was like in my mid-20s or something. I was a very shy kid, but I figured I could make money in sales. So here I go. And I go out and I'm like knocking on doors, door-to-door sales. I've never done that kind of thing before. And I was scared as fuck. I was scared shitless, you know what I mean? And sure enough, the first door I knocked on, they didn't want nothing to do with me. But I said, I'm just going to keep on doing this until I get into a house, you know, and I next door. By the third or fourth or fifth door, I got into a demonstration, and it all happened. You know, I did the thing, but it never, the fear of knocking on the doors never went away. You know, and I did that for 7 years. Every single knock I did was scary as fuck. But you know what? I've been through it so many times before. They just fucking did it, and I still. That's just life. You know what I mean? That is the discomfort of life. But by the end of that 7 years, let me tell you what, I could get in almost any door that I wanted to, you know? So just due to the experience that comes from just doing it, you know what I mean? And that is life. So like when you're feeling uncomfortable, like we all are sometimes, like embrace that shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because the alternative is never doing anything, because everything new is going to make you uncomfortable. Like that's your option. You can either embrace the uncertainty and the discomfort or hope for a bubble that you can live in forever, where people will take care of you, because you're never going to develop any strength. You're never going to develop any efficacy. You're never going to develop a sense of yourself, right? You have to get out there. You have to experience things the hard way in order for you to learn that they don't have to be so hard. That just you, through adaptation and learning and growing and being willing to change, can change everything about your experience. I always find this funny. This is why I like older people who have been around for a long time. Something breaks in their house, they're like, I got this. I'm just going to the hardware store. I love that shit, because that's what I mean. Like you could sit there and going, oh my God, oh, it's another bill. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to call someone to come and fix this. It's like, you could look that shit up and just learn how to fix it. You know, like you could just face your fears that you're not good enough or smart enough to learn how to fix it, because that's usually why we don't. Well, what am I? Am I a plumber? It's like, it's not that hard. It's water, it runs through fucking pipes. Figure it out. Like it's just look shit up, especially now. We have no reason not to say that we can't learn certain things, but more often than not, we just don't. Right? We just don't, because it's inconvenient. It's hard. We might fail. And the schooling system has made sure that we're fucking terrified of failure. Right. And so instead, you know, we just hide in our little bubble and we hope that somebody will come and save us. But again, you know, those older guys where that support structure wasn't there, those older people who were just like, you know, this is how you grow food. What, you don't know how to make preserves? Let me show you how to make preserves. What, you don't know how to eat off the land? Yeah, let me show you this. You know, it's in your back fucking yard, you know, things like that. It's just, and there's so much that people just don't understand, you know, and it's just because, again, like we've been told, like, don't be wrong, it means something about you. How can we learn anything? How can we learn anything if we're afraid to be wrong? That's why I was saying the other day that, you know, wrong has a totally different impact than incorrect. The word changes how you receive it. You know, you're never really wrong, because that means something about you, right? Because nothing means anything about you. Incorrect, maybe you didn't have all the facts, you know, sure. And that's going to be a majority of your life. But there's never been a single thing you've ever learned to do that at first didn't feel weird and unfamiliar. Never been a thing. But most of those things you take for granted now. You know, learning how to walk, learning how not to shit your pants. You know, these are all things that at one point you didn't know. You didn't know. Huh? Isn't that crazy? You didn't know those things. Now you do them like it was something you've known your whole fucking life. You didn't. None of the words I'm saying, in fact, would have made sense to you once upon a time. You had to learn all that shit too. And it wasn't fucking comfortable. You weren't happy about learning I before E except after C, because that shit doesn't apply half the fucking time. You weren't happy about learning any of these things. It was uncomfortable. But you benefited from it, and your life has changed. You have changed. You have grown. So it's such a waste of time and energy to run from the discomfort when you know out the other side there's a purpose, that you will become more of what you are, just because you're getting rid of all of this story that you can't be.
Yeah, and if I have this assumption that there's certain experiences that I shouldn't experience, or certain feelings that I shouldn't feel, like, oh, I should never feel nervous, I should never feel scared, I should never feel uncomfortable, then as soon as those come up, I'm going to think there's something wrong with what's going on. But if you shift that and be like, no, everything's on the table. Like, nerves are as equally on the table as happiness and joy and fear and concern and worry, and there's never anything that shouldn't be felt. But if I have this curated list of things that should be felt and shouldn't be felt, then there's going to be that judgment as soon as I label it as something. But if being scared, being nervous, being uncomfortable are always on the table, then there isn't so much to fight when it does come up. And then it's like, yeah, that's not no longer a good reason to avoid an experience. And I'm proud of myself for how well I maintained that as I was reading Ray's comments as it went by. Trust me, I have so many brutal fart this morning. I had too much carbs or too much protein or something last night. I was just wrecking. The crop dust today walking around were brutal. I was outside and it was pretty windy, but it was like, it was so bad that it was a windy day and like I could still kind of smell them outside. It's like, that's when you know that shit is rancid. But you know, the wind blows it around enough that it's not as concentrated. If it hits someone, it's like a parsed out thing. But yeah, it was on another level. Jake, what's up, man? Over to you.
What's up, man? Yeah, it's hard to keep it together. Like I'll have like something I'm gonna say, and I'll see somebody's comment come down, and I'm just like, it's fucking hilarious. But damn it, dude, I had like 40 things run through my mind, and I think they all just went away. Hold on, some of them will come back, maybe. Oh, okay. So I was thinking too, like when we experience emotions, we have such a oh, I'm anxious, oh, I'm scared, or I'm happy. That's such a shallow interpretation. Like an emotion is that black and white. Like it's like the whole entire scope of an emotion. And they're so closely related. Like Amanda, you talked about jumping off a cliff. So I don't know why that's. And you said I was so I'm losing all of my thoughts right now. You said you were scared and excited at the same time because they're so in the brain, they're so closely related that your brain can't almost tell the difference in some. So, when you start thinking about like when I tell myself I'm anxious, it's like I don't even think you don't even know what that means. You're just conditioned to say, "Oh, I'm anxious. Oh, I'm anxious right now. I'm scared right now." And it's like we don't even know what the fuck that really even means. And so it's kind of almost laughable sometimes when I think about like it's kind of like applying that emotion to a situation. That's all my perception anyway. It's just my take on what's going on. And then you were talking about like it's like putting yourself in a prison. It's like writing a book and you're the character. And then you write like, oh, I'm sad today. I'm gonna cry in my room. And then you're like, oh my God, like I'm helpless. And it's like, well, you just wrote that. Like you could just erase it, or you could just crumble it up and throw it away and not do fucking shit with it. But so it's kind of like the more you think about all of this stuff and you realize you take yourself too seriously. Like I'm out in public and I'm anxious. It's like what a center of the universe mentality in terms of everybody must be thinking about me and how is this gonna like it matters, like anybody gives a fuck anyway. Nobody cares. Like it's like think about how many people you walk past today. How many do you remember? You don't fucking remember hardly anybody. You might notice somebody doing something but it's like for a brief second and then you forget about it and you move on. So it's kind of like it's almost ridiculous when you really think about how serious you take yourself. You're like, oh, if I could see a video of that, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like just stop. Like it's like I don't know. But also when you talked about school, I just listened today during work, that episode about letting go of the question. That might be one of my favorite fucking episodes because the flow of that was so fucking dope. And y'all went in on like the education. Me and my dad had an hour-long conversation after I listened to that about the educational system. And he was talking about his experience. He went to high school in the late 70s, early 80s. And he was talking about the differences when he went versus when I went. But, we were talking about how we're still all fucked by the same system. It might look different back then, because there's a different, it's just a different point in time. So it's the same shit, just a different day. So we were talking about that, but Andrew, you were talking about, you had that fucking, I can't remember, you wrote about like a lizard fucking going in space or something, or fucking having adventures and shit. And I thought about when I was real early on, like right as I got into elementary school or right before that, I used to like writing like that. And it was just fun for the pure act of just doing it. Like there was no like, what am I going to do with this in the future? Can I do something with this? Who will think about, like, are they going to think this is stupid? You were like, oh, I fucking like lizards. And why couldn't a lizard go to fucking space? You don't care the logistics or any of that bullshit with it. But then you go through school and you realize they kind of beat everything you like. You go into school and they just beat that shit out of you. And like, I was a huge reader growing up and I loved books and I read so much. And as I got into high school, I started resenting reading and I started resenting learning and stuff like that. And it felt like a chore. Like when I would go to read a book, I would get like anxiety and I couldn't focus. And, you know, I was medicated with Adderall in like 6th grade. And while it helped me get better grades, but what it did was help me fit into their system. So like, yeah, the Adderall helped because I would sit still for 8 fucking hours and do everything they told me to do. And so it's like, yeah, they would love to put me on Adderall. It's like, you know, don't care about all the appetite suppression, all the like tremors it caused, the mood swings, the irritability, the just everything, especially when you're going through puberty. That's a fucking weird time to throw Adderall into your brain chemistry. Like that's fucking insane. And so I thought about how much I kind of fucking hate school. Like I just hate the whole concept about it. And even when I get in conversations about it and somebody's like, yeah, well, you know, people need to just like, they're like, I don't mind taking a test at the end of the year. And I'm like, for what? What's that test? What has that test done for you now, 10 years later? Are you showing people that fucking 99 in a coffee shop and getting like a free coffee? Like, what are you fucking doing with any of it? And they were like, yeah, but it shows that you worked hard and I'm like, yeah, it shows that you memorized something and then you halfway regurgitated it in a classroom and they gave you a fucking gold star and then you fucked off and left and went somewhere else. And it's like, you know, that's not, you know, they don't teach you about, and when I went to high school, they didn't teach about taxes. They didn't teach about anything in life that actually fucking matters. When all of a sudden I got out of high school, I went to college for 2 weeks and I dropped out because I called home. Well, I called home like I couldn't take the I felt like I was thrown out into the world and I had no clue. I wasn't around my family. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have the tools to take care of myself. And so I left after 2 weeks. And, you know, my family, it was that whole, it's still like a joke in the family. It's funny now, but like, I remember I'd go to family things and they'd be like, you know, it'd almost be like an embarrassing thing to bring up that I left school because that was gonna, like, as if that had something to do with my value as a person. And like, oh, well, you need to contribute to society and you need to get a degree. And I'm like, why would I spend this money if I have no clue what I want to do? Like, why I'm gonna get a business degree and then like fucking what? Like owe someone money? Like, so I was like, I don't want to go right now because I feel like I'm wasting money. And it was just such a it's almost like a non-negotiable in some people's eyes. Like that means you're some burnout loser, you know, oh, he just probably wants to, he's just sitting at home smoking pot all day, fucking, you know, not going to church. Like, well, you fuck both of those places, but you know, both of them are the same. They're really the same fucking thing. It's the same mentality, and it's just kind of it's almost sad. More, it's funny, but it's almost sad when you think about the value people derived in high school and they got out of high school. Maybe you were like the guy in high school. You were like, you know, I even feel bad for the guys who were sort of assholes, you know, top of the school, top of the food chain, because you see a lot of those guys now and life sort of hit them when they got out of high school. And nobody gave a fuck that you were prom king when you got it out of high school. Like, you're not going to cut in line and be like, dude, I was fucking prom king. Like, you know, like, you know, no one cares when, you know, everybody's dealing with their own shit. And so when I think about, you know, everything I sort of went through from like K through 12, you know, Ray, y'all talked about like kids, you know, they're like drinking or doing drugs after they get out of high school and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, because it's like 12 years of trauma and like it's almost hard to put into words. 8 hours a day for 12 years, sort of in like a prison system mentality. It's like imagine doing 12 years and then all of a sudden you get popped out into the world and they're like, all right, now go make us money, like go pay taxes, go give us your money. So it's kind of like I'm surprised I didn't just get out of school and just fucking strip all my clothes off and run down the street and fucking and never, I don't know, never return to society. That's how it felt sort of when I got out of school. I was like, I have no clue what to do. And I felt like y'all wasted 12 years of my life when I could have been gaining life experience. It would have been better if you dropped me at the library every day and I just could read or talk to people and that pass by. Like I would have learned more. So it's just fucking, I don't know. It's just fucking ridiculous, honestly. And it's kind of sad and sickening. And it's like some cruel joke. But yeah, so, fuck that.
Oh yeah, yeah, dude, it's fucking nuts when you start digging into what's actually going on and the fact that kids like could just be kids. And it's funny how long, when we're in the system, when we're going through this stuff, we don't think like, oh, well, reality wasn't always like this. Like until I was probably 20, I never considered, I was just like, this is as equatable to the fabric of reality as me being here now, like this system that we're existing within. It's like, oh, must be just how it's always been. And then you start to realize, oh shit, no, actually it's super young. Actually, it wasn't always this way, but they almost make it seem like it has been that way. And like the fucking shit that we learn and how biased it is. Like we had this conversation, maybe it was in that episode about how, in the US, we learn about US history and how great the US is. In Canada, you learn about Canadian history and how great Canada was. In fucking, I don't know, Germany, you probably learned about German history and how great Germany was. That was not maybe the greatest country to choose, but it probably plays out like that, like every country has their shit. That's what I'm saying. It's like, what country is going to come to mind? Germany. All right, we're going to say that. All right. But anyway, you get my point that it's like, it's all biased. It's all fucking propaganda. It's like school is a load of propaganda to just fill our brains with things to bog us down, to put us in the spot of just like kind of despair. So we're just beaten out of us so that we feel like we're almost nothing, so that we have to then become something and make all of this money that then gets taxed and then given back to system. And, no one wants to admit that they are the system going through it, dealing with it. They're like, no, the system did this to me. It's all the system's fault. It's like, yeah, but once you start to have these realizations, if you're willing to look, then it's like, oh, but I also perpetuate this mentality by certain things that I do. And so there's actually an influence that I can have over it. And then it's not so much, fuck everything. It's like, all right, things are pretty fucked up, but I have influence. I have an ability to do things with reality, with life. And then it gets a little less dark.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
I'm with you, man.
Where they give you it's like you're starving, so they give you the food, but they're the ones who took your food away. So it's like they want you to think that they're coming in and saving the day when they're also the villain. And so it's like you don't question them. Why would you? They're helping me out when they're the ones also stepping on your neck the whole entire way. So it's like, fuck them at the end of the day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's fun to dig into for sure. Amanda?
Yeah, it's definitely fuck that. And I know that has nothing to do with me. That as many times as my family has told me that they don't like something that I'm doing, it's only because of how they think my behavior reflects on them. So it's not even that they like genuinely dislike what I'm doing. They only dislike it because they think it makes them look bad. That's it. And so even their criticism isn't even personal. And I'm like, I am almost offended that you're not genuinely offended. Like you're telling me all this and you're not even you really don't even give a fuck. Like you really don't. Because if I never saw them again, right? And I maintain, let's say I have a bad habit of leaving dishes in the sink, right? And let's say in this example that I never talk to my family ever again. Do you think that they're going to lose sleep over the idea that I'm leaving dishes in my sink in an apartment that they never visit? Probably not. Probably not. I don't think they will think about that behavior that they hate so much ever. And they only bring it up when they come visit me. Let's say in this example, and it hasn't been, I never saw them again. In this example, they came over, they saw the dishes. They probably only would make a comment because they imagine that somebody would come to my apartment that's a friend and would think, wow, no one must have raised Amanda properly. She must have had no home training. Like and I imagine that that's why in my apartment, if they notice the dishes, that's why they say they don't like it. Like, oh, you should really be cleaner, Amanda. And they're only saying I should be cleaner because they imagine somebody else will come here and think that they didn't tell me to clean those dishes to begin with. But they're not actually at home wondering, I wonder how many dishes are in that sink. They're not at the apartment and they're thinking about it, highly unlikely. So then when I keep that in mind, I know that even their shit talking is bullshit. And so I really don't have to take that seriously. Like I really don't. But it's so funny that I will take that seriously if I agree with it. And then that's why it bothers me. Because let's say the beer, I love it. Let's say, let's say that they, what is it? What could be something else that like, I don't know, I'm just in my apartment and I don't do my laundry for weeks at a time. Like I only think that my family would be disappointed if I agree that I would be better if I were cleaner. Right? Because if I go to Thanksgiving and they say something like, you're a terrible unicyclist. I really hate the way that you ride that unicycle. And I'm like, but I don't ride unicycles. And so that criticism has no weight because I don't agree with it. But if I go there and they say, have you gotten better? Have you gotten cleaner? Do you clean your apartment more often? And I'm like, well, why the fuck do you care? It's like, because I think that I should. Right. But if they criticize something that I don't care about, then it doesn't matter how often they say it because I'm like, oh, well, that has nothing to do with me. And it's easy to do that when it's something that you don't agree with. So, I'm loud. I tend to be a very loud person. And so I've had people say like, you're really loud. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I don't know, like, that's it. I am. I can be loud. I can be messy. I can leave dishes in the sink. I can do all these things. And I also can clean them up. I can be quiet. I cannot say anything. It's like at the end of the day, I can do all of these things just like you can do all of these things. And so it doesn't really matter if somebody doesn't like it because all that they're telling me is that they think they're feeling uncomfortable. They're feeling insecure. And so I can say, would that really make you feel better? If I always had my dishes clean, I love all the emojis. If I really had all my dishes clean, would you really feel better? Would I no longer be a disappointment to anyone else? And it's like, they can come up with a million reasons. And so not taking the reason seriously is just something that I always can choose to do because it doesn't mean anything unless I agree with it. And I don't have to agree with it. It doesn't mean shit. When I clean my dishes, I'm not a better person. When I don't do them, I'm not a worse person. When I reach out to my family, we don't talk for 6 months and then I call them again. And it's like, a good daughter calls more often. I was like, does she? Let me know when you meet her. Because it's a two-way street. If I don't call you often, you also could call me and you don't, and I don't give you shit for it because I understand that you're living your life and I don't have to be the main priority in your life because you should be. Just like I'm the main priority in my life. And so I really don't care if your opinion of me is always changing. Sometimes you like me, sometimes you don't. That's all right. That's a part of the package. I know that I'm going to annoy you. I know that I'm going to make you laugh. I know that I'm going to do all those things because I am everything. So I don't need you to like me all the time because I certainly don't like you all the time. And I've said that to people like, that I can still love you and you can annoy me, right? At the same time. At the same time, I can love you and you can still annoy me. And it's just because that's when my preference is coming up because I think that something needs to be different. And that's when I can say, you know what? I'm only upset. I'm only triggered because I think that this is reflecting badly on my character. I'm only getting triggered because I think this means something about me. So ultimately, I can just fucking hang out and chill. And when criticism comes to me, I can say, you know, if I never did that again, would you be happy? Would that be the solution that you're looking for? Because I'll never be able to make you happy, because your preferences are always changing, just like mine are. So you're going to like me, you're going to not like me, but I hope that, you know, or not that I hope, I imagine that as much as you can create the preference, you can get rid of it. So ultimately what I end up saying is get over it, because I don't have to do anything. I don't have to change anything, especially now that I'm an adult, especially now that I live on my own and do my own thing. I was like, I don't have to do anything. Like, you don't live my life for me. So you can't make the choices for me like you're going to live them. In the same way that I don't make the choices for you, like I'm going to live them for you. So make sure you make your choices, because you have to live with them, because I don't lose sleep whether you do something that I like or you do something that I don't like, because it's all there. It's all on the table. So I'm going to like it. I'm going to not like it. And I'm going to tell myself to get over it, because ultimately my opinion is not necessary and neither is yours.
Fuck yeah. Amen. Yeah. how often I'll hear someone say some sort of opinion, be like, and I don't like the way you do that. Okay. And they're like, you should be different. Why? Is your whole entire life and situation not enough for you? Like, I don't know, go do it yourself. You don't like the way that I'm doing something? Do it for yourself. Like, change. It's oh, I find it so funny how people tell other people how to live, or like say some opinion about how they're living and think that it's going to have influence or impact over it. It's like, that's really cute that you think that I would think that your opinion is so important to me that I'm actually going to change the way that I live my life because of your tiny little opinion and preference of how I'm living. Like, yeah, your opinion is what it is, and it can stop right there. And it's not going to guarantee anything, because there's no control over me with it. But yeah, some people just feel like they need that because they can't handle looking at their own shit.
It's funny. I was going to mention this earlier after Jake had mentioned it as well, that we get so caught up thinking that people are thinking about us, and we don't recognize the only reason that we make that assumption is because we're so self-absorbed. Like, we don't recognize that the more we think about ourselves, the more we have to assume everybody's thinking about us, because the only thing we're ever looking at when we look at other people are our assumptions. We're only ever looking at our projections. So the more we're dwelling on ourselves, the more the whole world is dwelling on us, because the whole world is. We are our whole world. I just wanted to mention very quickly, we got about 10 minutes left here. If anybody would like to join us on Patreon after this, we do group chats 5 days a week. You can join us, patreon.com/dualistic unity. There's a 7-day free trial available. It's just worth it. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It is absolutely worthwhile, and we really appreciate the support.
Amen. Sarah, what up?
Okay. So something that like I guess is coming up for me with like listening to like Amanda share, like I feel like I struggle sometimes with finding kind of like the middle ground of like I don't have to change and I'm like fine just being the way that I am. And then also like taking in feedback from people that I care about and actually like implementing that. But I guess like part of it, like part of the taking the feedback would be like I have to like even agree with the feedback that they're giving me. Like if somebody comes to me and they're like, Sarah, when I talk, if you don't like look me in the eyes, I feel like you don't give a fuck about what I'm saying. And I care about them feeling like I give a fuck, then I would take the feedback. And so like it happens like the same way where like there's time, I guess, I don't know if it's in the same way, but people ask me like, well, you grew up in Mexico City and like now you live in Chicago, like which one do you prefer? And it's like, well, they both have their benefits. Like Mexico was like a beautiful experience and it was my childhood and it like created this foundation of who I am. but it also like gave me certain values and ideas about who I was supposed to be that are very limiting and that I don't actually like think are beneficial to me at all. And then like moving to the United States, like yeah, like there's like more freedoms in certain ways, or there's like more benefits in certain ways, but at the same time, like maybe the relationships that I have with people don't feel as like close and intimate like the relationships that I have with people in Mexico. And like, like kind of like finding the middle ground of reality, I guess, where it's like I'm not swinging into like now like the United States is everything and like fuck Mexico, and then like also being so attached to like I was born and raised in Mexico and like nothing will ever top that shit. And I hate it here. And I've hated it the past 11 years of my life. And like kind of having the same thing with like I've been this way my entire life, and so I'm always going to be this way because I want to. And then also being like, everything that everybody tells me like has to be how I adapt my life because then like that's the truth. And then finding the middle ground of like, I love it here. And I also love every time I go and like visit Mexico. And I love that my family lives there. And I find it sad that like I can't see them all the time, but I also love it here because I have a life here. And like on the same page being like, well, like I like who I am in these ways. And also like maybe there's some truth to like the reflection that people are showing me. And like I could use to listen to some feedback and like question like, okay, like am I too stuck in my ways to like my own detriment at this point? And I just like am completely unwilling to see it. And like I'm not willing to negotiate because it pains me to admit that like maybe I don't like this part of myself that much either.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely something that builds over time in terms of just finding that balance between the two. But I would say that I tend to keep a real close eye out for something that I react to. If there's something that's like, it stings a bit, or what the fuck? And I'm immediately like, there's a lesson. Hold up. Let me calm the fuck down because I've missed it. Right. And that's pretty much it. The rest of the time, if somebody's giving me feedback, I just listen and I know that I'm listening. It doesn't mean I have to agree. It doesn't mean that, I'm going to necessarily go, well, yeah, well, if that's the way you want it, you got it, like things like that. It's like, what's that? You don't look in my eyes. Well, let me just fucking do that, like, and it's just, maybe I don't, maybe I'm not the kind of person for me, especially because I have, an eye condition, let's just say. And so I don't see much out of my right eye. And people have commented like, I always feel like you're kind of looking at me from the side. I'm like, because that's where I can see you. Right. But I've actually had people say like, well, it might seem a little bit sketchy. It's like, that's totally up to you. Like, you can view this however the fuck you want, like by any means. And I'm not going to cater to that, but thanks for letting me know. Now I can tell you what's happening. Right. But that's it, is I watch for where it gets a rise out of me. And immediately I'm like, I should listen to that.
Yeah, right. And then even being willing to recognize when I'm having a very strong opinion about something too, and then checking that. Like if I think I'm very, very sure about something, like, oh, this thing, I have this and this and that. And I even hear from people like, oh, like I heard from someone once, like, oh, it's important to have opinions. It's vital. You should have an opinion about everything. It's like, oh my God. And then what happens when, I don't know, you learn something new or new evidence comes into play? Does that opinion then shift? It's like, yeah, but you hold on to it until it does. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like opinions, how self-defining our opinions are. It's like, wow, that'll really reinforce that I'm me separate from everything else, because this is my opinion and this is what I believe to be true. When you don't have so many opinions, it's like you're willing to keep your eyes open to seeing how things actually are, as opposed to, my opinion and what makes me feel more comfortable by having it.
Absolutely. We have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to pass it over to the Count. How you doing, Marie? It's good to see you.
Oui, oui, Marie.
Bonjour. Yeah, I had to jump in on this, especially I jumped in after talking about like literally, jumping in and doing that more. And same, guys, I've been jumping in too. No, and what's funny is today I had a situation where so many things came up, and I'm trying to see how it'll flow out. So let's see if can I get all the thoughts that I had? Probably not, but let's just roll with it. I work at a school, and it was cool when that came up. I love when conversations about education and how horrible it is, and how much it really is trapping. And I remember going through the school system and being like, oh my God, how long have I been in this hellhole? And like, how many years will it be until I'm free? Like, I used to think that, I remember like 5th grade, like counting, I'm like, I still have so much more of this shit, and like counting down. And it's been fun to like reach the point of my life that I've been waiting for so long, and remember being aware of waiting for that. Like, wow, you're super trapped right now. It won't be like that forever, but this really sucks right now. And so like now I'm in that state, and it's like, okay, now what do I do with this? What do I do with this point of my life, or awareness, and now a little more freedom and less trapped? And it's been fun kind of going back into the education system on the other side and doing what I can to make students feel less trapped, which is hard because we live in a world that does that, but ultimately it still is our choice at the end of the day. Like, yeah, a lot of us went through this garbage, but like I've been teaching kids a lot of social emotional lessons and mindfulness based lessons, and literally had a lesson the other day about perspective, teaching kindergartners that one situation, there are multiple perspectives that are happening. And they're like, what is perspective? I'm like, a way of seeing something, or a way of viewing something. And so they're like, oh, wow. And so like we brought up scenarios, and they were like, some of them were really like, what the fuck? Because, you just like shatter the walls of this this bubble that we live in, that like only our experience matters, or only our experience is happening. And it's like, nope, there's actually many perspectives that are happening under this one experience, and here we are trying to navigate it. Let's do it together. And so I don't know, the dream is to eventually learn enough from teaching kids and working in different schools, so hopefully creating one with a bunch of people that also like not even creating a school. Just, I think it would be called community, but people get weird about that stuff. It's like, oh, cult, and it's like, no. But who knows what'll happen? I'm just riding it out and letting go throughout the process.
Yeah, that's the only thing that we can do, because it's the thing that frankly nobody has been doing. It's just surrendering and going along and being themselves. Everybody's been caught up in this idea of progress and being something and self-improvement, all that stuff. And without realizing it, we put so much pressure on ourselves that it rolls downhill onto everybody that we try to raise or help or teach. All of that pressure just rolls into everybody that we have an impact on. And so it's the one thing that we haven't done collectively, is move away from that pressure, to relieve that pressure, to accept ourselves, to allow ourselves to see what we're capable of when we're not whipping ourselves and judging ourselves into fucking paralysis. So I look forward to the day when you can build that alternative schooling structure. And I look forward to the day that we can possibly be a part of that. I'm going to pass it over to Andrew quickly. We've got like a minute and a half left, and then I figured we pass it over to Jackie so she can shut down today's episode, as we are going into season 6 soon, and Jackie is going to have her own series with Amanda. They've already recorded a couple of episodes, including Dualistic Unity Real episode 1, which you can find online now.
That's all I got. Jackie,
Thank you.
shut us down.
Were you snorting right there? Oh my God.
That was my pig noises.
Zoom cut it right out.
Oh, really? No wonder you look so confused. I was like,
you just looked like you were getting really friendly with your microphone.
Oh, God damn internet.
I don't know. I really don't have anything to add. I've just been having fun, wanted to jump in and just say hi, say happy Halloween, everybody. Um, but no, for real, it's like I've been imagining life and sort of just thinking about this as being me sitting in the same place, like in a room, and it's there's like sets that are forming around me, and like I don't even realize that it's happening. I liked sort of what Amanda was saying too about like she's the painter, and like she's so quick she doesn't realize herself doing it. It's like I am an entire theater company and like I'm sitting in the middle, but I'm also the scenes changing. I'm also all of the actors that are coming in and playing different roles in my life, but really I'm just staying in the same place. And that place is just the present moment. And at the end of the day, I'm okay because I'm just sitting in the middle of it. And all of this shit is just playing out the way it's playing out. And I can go through life without getting so caught up in trying to control it, because there's just no way that's ever going to happen. And I'm just here for, as the experiencer, I'm kind of just along for the ride. And it's just fun leaning into that and being like, okay, let me play along, kind of. Let me express myself. Let me try and make this as fun as possible, because that's all I can ever do. I can just enjoy the show. And yeah, that's it.
Amen.
Bye, everybody.
Amen.
Thank
been
you
a
for joining
blast.
us, everyone. We're going to be on Patreon after this. If you can join us there, we'd love to see you, as always.
Bye, guys.